Okay, so what I have here is a scenario with Aperture that we're going to play around with. Notice the bottles are heavily lit. I mean, there is more spectral highlights in these things than you'll ever imagine. And why is because if I pan around the room here, I have all these very heavy light sources being aimed at the bottle all at the same time, including a spotlight right there above going right onto the bottle. I also have the flashes still. So there's a lot of light in this scene. A lot of light to calculate for. And just making sure my composition's still lined up in my... Okay, notice the light meter. I haven't touched it. I've changed and added so many lights to the scene now. But the light meter's okay. Wow, 0 still. Now, the only bad thing is I can't calculate for flash because flash doesn't exist yet. You know what I mean? You can't calculate for light that doesn't exist. So in here, this is probably a little off because of that. Well, we're going to take a picture of this composition with all these lights all at the same time and see what happens. So here's my composition before I turned on all the lights. And you can see all these great reflections. Now, the reflections, if you look at them right here, I'll concentrate on this one little reflection. Okay? Let's go back to the camera and let's crank down the aperture. Let's go to maybe 14. And then let's jog up shutter speed, so it's at 0 again. Let's go back to aperture, concentrate on this one spectral highlight, capture. See? Now, before, the spectral highlight was kind of interesting to look at. And you notice I have these colored ones right here based upon the colored lights in the background. But now, the next one, they're so precise. They're so evilly precise. So that is what the aperture allows you to do. Is let's say I use it in another practical application. On a bright sunny day, I want a picture of the clouds. How would I do that? Well, I would crank the aperture up and go ahead and take a picture of the clouds. The sky is so bright, doesn't matter because the aperture is allowing light slowly into the camera. Okay. Very important that you don't want to take a picture of the sun. That's damaging to a camera. It's getting better. The higher end cameras nowadays, you can take rays of the sun, but don't point it directly at the sun to try to take a picture with the aperture cranked. Okay, it is possible, but don't do it. Not with my equipment anyway. Now, let me introduce shutter speed to the equation. Let's go back to on location. In my opinion, in my humble opinion, there is only 2 shutter speeds that I ever worry about. Okay, let's factor those in. Off tripod and on tripod. Okay, and then let's deal with averages. When I am dealing with off tripod, on vacation, taking pictures of whatever, I am in a range of 1/125th of a second on up. Okay? That's me. I know that anything below 125th of a second, I cannot hand hold as much. And I have to stand very still for this. Elephant jumps out in front of me and I want to take a shot. I don't want to worry about balance. I just want to take a picture of the elephant. On vacation, I always keep it right about here. Okay? Which means I don't have a whole lot of room to play with aperture. I mean, let me lower it down. Perfectly exposed is 5.6. So that means I can't change aperture at all on vacation. All right? Only when I'm pointing it right directly at a very bright object can I change this. Now, on tripod, lots of possibilities. So let's say anything below 125th of a second, all the way down, I have that. Well, that means that if I crank aperture all the way up to 36, and then I crank this down, I now have all the way down to bulb to play. So that's why you always see me in the studio taking pictures of weird objects with a tripod, because that way I can really experiment with light, color, and the depth of field stuff. But anytime you're off the tripod, you are limited to what you can do as far as being handheld, because this is never going to be exposed correctly. So that is shutter speed in a nutshell. And of course we'll get into it a little bit more, because there is another factor that I don't like to use too often, and that's ISO. ISO is a multiple factor that allows you to, it doubles the amount of processing power within the camera, so it processes the film faster. Therefore, you can be in a very low lit situation with a high ISO. Of course, there is a very high price to pay for using ISO, and that is called noise. So we'll get into noise here in the next few lessons, but for right now, that is shutter speed and aperture. All right, enjoy.